What's up, everyone? It's Dakota, and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering video. And today we're going to be taking a look at the mono red aggro deck for the standard format. Seems to have been the weapon of choice, while a lot of decks are trying to play this kind of mid-rangey-esque game plan, where they're trying to play cards like Temporary Lockdown to shut down like Corey Steel Cutters and like the various tokens that come from the Is It Prowess strategies. Mono red aggro takes a different approach, and it's literally putting pedal to the metal on turn one and never letting off the gas until the car either explodes, runs out of gas, or completely just runs over the deck that it's targeting. And it's pretty easy to see why that this is a strategy that a lot of players are starting to kind of gravitate towards. I mean, the fact that usually with a lot of these red-based aggro decks, the decisions are pretty streamlined. You're just trying to maximize the amount of mana that you're spending on every single turn. You want to make sure that maybe you're not necessarily hitting your land drop every single turn, but that you're using all of your mana effectively and as efficiently as possible. And a lot of the times you're going to win those games. And especially too, if your opponents stumble, you just end up completely running them over. So today we're going to be taking a look at the mono red aggro deck. But before we get too deep into the deck list, if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to see more videos from me, where we post mainly about the modern and standard format, as well as some other longer form videos for your viewing pleasure. So if that's something that interests you, please consider subscribing and ring that notification bell so you know when those videos get posted. It's a free, easy way to support me on my content. And of course, if you enjoy the video, you learned something, whatever the case may be, please be sure to leave a like on the video, and of course, leave a comment down below of maybe another deck that you want to see featured kind of in this series. We like to look at various different decks from, the modern and standard format and what's doing very well competitively to kind of get you prepared for your, next big event, whether it's a regional championship qualifier, regional championship, whatever the case may be. If you want even more content as well, you can go down in the description down below. You can check out my Discord server. You can go ahead and join subscribe to the Casual Spikes Podcast YouTube channel. Follow me over on twitch.tv/CryDaddy23. And lastly, I want to thank the sponsor of the channel, Manatraders. It's a monthly subscription service that you can use to rank cards through Magic the Gathering Online and play whatever decks you want, whatever you want. The service is really cool. I've had them for over 5 years across 2 different stints. The loyalty bonuses are great. You have instant trading. There's not really any, card availability issues. I'm always able to play whatever cards I want whenever I want, and the service only gets better and better kind of as time goes on. So feel free to go ahead and check them out. Use my code in the description down below. You get 5% off your monthly subscription. And let's go ahead and get into this mono red aggro deck. So mono red aggro is essentially the tried and true aggro deck of any format. While a lot of players kind of like to dismiss it and saying well, it doesn't take any strategy, whatever the case may be, I think that while there is a lot of draws from these mono red aggro decks that you can argue are just yeah, that was pretty brainless, whatever, you just go 1, 2, 3, boom. I think a lot of the times you see how good mono red aggro players are when they're kind of throwing out their timing and trying to use their mana efficiently and using it efficiently in the right ways to kind of try to win these games. So, of course, in these red aggro strategies, while in Is It Prowess, we see a lot of, less of actual creatures and more of these other permanents that kind of make tokens and everything like that to kind of blank a lot of the targeted removal. Mono red aggro is leaning pretty heavily on the creatures. So we see, the typical mouse package, with maybe something that we haven't heard of in a while here. Heartfire Hero, Emberheart Challenger, and Manifold Mouse. These are just kind of have been the go-to red aggro creatures for a while. Heartfire Hero, of course, 1 mana, 1/1. Whenever it's the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and when it dies, deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. This can kind of get your opponents in trouble as being a creature that you're going to want to target with, your spells and various different abilities to end up growing it even bigger, dealing chunks of damage to your opponent's life total. And then if they ever end up actually killing it, whether by a board wipe or by something like Go for the Throat, they end up taking even more damage on top of it too. So this is kind of one of your ideal 1-mana starts. You also have cards like Hired Claw, which allow you in multiples to just deal a lot of damage to your opponent just by simply attacking with a lizard that you control. And then this is also a mana sink as well, where you can put 2 mana into it to give it a +1/+1 counter. You can only activate it if your opponent's lost life this turn, but you can kind of trigger itself by playing it on turn 1, playing your second land, attacking, dealing your opponent 1 damage, activating it to make it 2/3. And again, this is where the important part of trying to use your mana effectively in this mono red deck and making sure that you're spending every single mana that you have available to you every single turn to maximize the amount of damage you're playing and put the most amount of pressure on your opponent. A lot of the times just going in on this Higher Claw, activating it a few times, and your opponent's finally forced to use a removal spell after it's done 8, 10, 12 damage, you're totally fine with that from the mono red deck. Obviously, if it goes the distance, great, but if it deals 25 to 50% of your opponent's life total, that's an amazing rate that most any players would end up taking in their deck. We'd see Monastery Swiftspear, a card that I thought was like one of the worst cards in like the mono red strategy, but turns out it just continues to see more and more play. And I mean, it might just be a totally fine like 1-mana creature that you're able to kind of get pretty aggressive with, and then also benefit from some of the other like non-creature spells that you end up playing. We go back to like Emberheart Challenger, Manifold Mouse. Like Manifold Mouse is the way that you're going to be able to target a mouse you control essentially for free at the beginning of combat. You're going to be able to give it double strike or trample, and we'll kind of go over in a minute why like double strike just always seems to be the correct answer in 90% of cases. You can also offspring it for 2 mana or for 2 more mana. So for 4 mana, you can get a 1/2 and a 1/1 that's going to be able to target 2 different mice, which means that if you have like an Emberheart Challenger or Heartfire Hero, you're going to be able to give them both double strike. You're going to be able to exile a card with Emberheart Challenger and then potentially have access to another spell or hit your land drop. On top of this creature, also having prowess is going to be pretty nice, again, with some of the other spells that we are playing in this deck, and it's just going to make combat a lot harder when you don't have to necessarily point, your best pump spell at Emberheart Challenger to have it really do anything. You can just play, your burn spells and your pump spells and not have to worry about the Emberheart Challenger because it's going to end up dealing a lot of damage just on its own. At the top end of our creatures, we have Screaming Nemesis, 3 mana 3/3 with haste. Then whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any other target. If a player is dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of the game. So this is a way that for a lot of the white-based strategies where they're trying to play Bezas and try to like bolster the life total, maybe even like bouncing their Beza or picking up their Beza, whatever the case may be, and then replaying it to gain even more life, Screaming Nemesis is going to put a pretty nice stop to that. The spells, we have 4 Burst Lightning, 4 Monstrous Rage, 4 Lightning Strike, 3 Witchstalker Frenzy. There's a secret mode on Witchstalker Frenzy. So this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature that attack this turn. So it also counts your opponent's creatures as well. So this could essentially be a 1 mana removal spell on your opponent's turn. But this deals 5 damage to target creature. A lot of the times you could turn this into a secret burn spell by targeting your own Screaming Nemesis and just dealing 5 damage to your opponent. It does actually come up, I think, quite a bit. It's like an easy way that you close out games where like Witchstalker Frenzy doesn't really have any text in a lot of like control-based matchups. This is something that you can do where like you play Screaming Nemesis, you tag with a bunch of creatures, you get in your damage, and then boom, you just end up dealing 5 damage to your Screaming Nemesis, essentially being kind of like a Goblin Grenade or Tribal Flames, whatever. Choose your 5 damage burn spell of choice, and that's kind of how it ends up turning out. Lightning Strike, Burst Lightning. These are just, super easy. Burst Lightning, deal 2 for 1 mana, and then a lot of the times you end up getting to 5 mana in those longer games, so it's not completely out of the realm to kick this and deal 4 damage to any target. And of course, Lightning Strike, simple, 2 mana, deal 3 damage to any target, ends up dealing with a decent amount of the format that can kind of help you clear the way and get in a bunch of damage with your big and powerful creatures. Monstrous Rage, of course, might be one of the best red cards in the format, giving a creature +2/+0 until end of turn and creating a monster roll token, which gives it a +1/+1 and trample, is why that, we don't really necessarily worry about trample too much on the Manifold Mouse. While obviously if you don't have a Monstrous Rage and you have 2 Manifold Mice in play, you're able to give trample, double strike, or whatever. But a lot of the times, like, you just play Manifold Mouse on turn 2, you give Heartfire Hero double strike, you hit him for 4, and then the next turn you end up targeting again, giving it double strike, pumps up to 3, and then you end up pumping it up to 6 power, and just, having a 6 power double striking creature that isn't really going to be effectively blocked in combat, either to kill the Heartfire Hero or soak up, just even a little bit of damage instead of trying to soak up the full 12. So there's definitely a lot of pressure that the mono red deck puts in that place, because Monstrous Rage on any creature at any point might not only be lethal, or, if it's not lethal, it's going to end up dealing tons of damage to your opponent. So definitely going to be putting them in a pretty big bind, and why I honestly hate the fact that Monstrous Rage is going to be here post-rotation. And actually even looking through a lot of the deck too, like Monastery Swiftspear is like the only card that's going to end up actually rotating out of this deck, because a lot of these other cards, and Obliterating Bolt, but a lot of these other cards are just going to still stick around here, so that's definitely something nice to know. Mana base, super straightforward, 16 mountains, 3 rock face villages. This is going to give a lizard or mouse, which are really the important creature types to us. Creature types to us. Give it +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. You can only activate it as a sorcery, but this is another way that you can kind of target your Heartfire Hero, your Emberheart Challenger. You end up drawing cards or growing your Emberheart Challenger or your Heartfire Hero, whatever the case may be. while also, being able to target like Hired Claw to be able to get in and get the trigger. And then you have 2 Soulstone Sanctuary. This is a 4, taps for colorless mana, which isn't necessarily great for us, but you can pay 4 mana. It becomes a 3/3 Vigilance with all creature types. It's still a land, and you don't have to pay this again. So you just kind of like have a turn where maybe you don't do anything, you pay 4 mana, turn into a 3/3, and the fact that it is every creature type means that it does trigger Hired Claw if there's a Hired Claw on the battlefield, so you're able to attack with the Soulstone Sanctuary and get some Hired Claw triggers, or target it with Manifold Mouse as well, which is pretty neat there. Sideboard, we have 3 Soul Guide Lantern, 4 Torch to Tower, 2 Magebane Lizards, 2 Obliterating Bolt, and 4 Sunspine Links. And that's the mono red aggro deck for the standard format. Overall, I mean, this is a deck that I played a lot of on Arena. Like, this has been my go-to deck for a while in the format. I think that the fact that the decisions are relatively streamlined, and it really just comes down to how are you spending your mana and what are you spending it on, and is it the most efficient and effective way of spending your mana, rather than kind of having like 4 or 5 different decisions that you could potentially make in a turn, and then also trying to maximize those decisions and kind of figure it out from there. I think a lot of the mono red aggro strategy, you're able to kind of mostly ignore what your opponent is doing. Obviously, that's not entirely true, but you can just kind of like curve out and do your thing and be super aggressive, and again, keep applying pressure to your opponent, and you're just going to make life very difficult for them. On top of that too, the deck's cheap, less than $150 in paper, $42 on Moto. Like, that's super affordable, honestly, for a tier 1 deck in the format. I mean, arguably the second best deck in the format. And just kind of ends up beating up on a lot of the other slower decks in the format. So definitely go ahead, check out the deck. I'll have the deck list linked in the description down below. Again, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, dislike if you didn't, and of course leave a comment down below of what deck you would like to see featured next on the channel. That's gonna do it for me in this video. Hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope to see you all in the next one.